My name is Nick Schwedock. I've been in real estate now for 7 years, and almost every single real property I've ever sold has some sort of septic system or on-site sewage treatment facility. And so, out of necessity, I needed to, be informed on that so I can share that with my clients because, about half my clients have probably had some experience with septic, and about half haven't. And if you don't know what you're getting yourself into, it can be a little daunting and seem overwhelming. And it's also one of the more expensive things you can have to replace or fix if you're not taking care of it. Every property in Texas requires a seller's disclosure. And if you have a septic system or an on-site sewage facility, then you need the addendum attached to that seller's disclosure stating, just the general information about it and the condition of the on-site sewer treatment facility. And so that's going to be required. The only time you don't need a septic form or on-site sewer form is when you're not required to have a seller's disclosure because it's an addendum that's attached to that. On the on-site sewer treatment form, some of the information you might see is going to be informational, like the age of the system, when it was last pumped, and what type of system. It goes into a little bit more detail, but those are the big things. It's very much informational, and then it's an opportunity to disclose any known material defects. There are two types of septic systems that you're going to deal with in most homes, and that's going to be a conventional system and an aerobic system. And so in a conventional system, it's just basically a concrete box in the ground. It uses gravity and a drain field, and it's usually the most cost-effective way. However, most counties won't allow you to install new versions of that because they're not as environmentally friendly as, say, an aerobic system. Almost every house that's built now is going to be required to have an aerobic system. One of the most important things you can do for your septic system is keep it maintained. And so just like your HVAC system, how you keep it maintained and increase its longevity, the same thing can be said for your septic system. And so typically, I think the standard is 3 to 5 years you want to have it pumped. However, if you're regularly using it or you have a family, a larger family, then it's probably better to be on a yearly plan where you have it serviced. And so for a conventional system, it's really as simple as having whatever company you decide to go with. There's usually 3 or 4 in every market, come out and pump it once a year. It probably takes less than an hour, and it'll drastically increase the lifespan. For an aerobic system, they will also run some checks on the like the electrical components and make sure everything's operating at peak performance, because you do not want to have to replace your septic system prematurely because it can be very costly. When I'm preparing a home for the market, I like to get documentation on everything, and that includes the septic system. If they're on some sort of service plan, it can be as simple as just a receipt showing that they had it serviced. Or if they've had any routine maintenance done, or if they repaired something, then it's good to have those receipts. It's not necessary, but if you have that, it just provides more information to the buyer and puts them at ease. As a listing agent, one of the best things you can do when you're getting a house ready or you're taking a listing that has a septic system is to just address that like you would any other part of the house and ask questions and see if they have what information they have on it, because that'll kind of prompt what your next steps are. What I've found is most of the time when someone has been on the septic system for a couple of years is they're very knowledgeable on their septic system, and they can almost always provide all the documentation that you need. And so it's just as simple as asking, because a lot of times the seller, they're not going to know to give that information to you. You have to ask for it. And like I said, almost always they're very informed on it because it's a core component of their house. As a buyer's agent, when I am touring a home or setting up a showing for a house with a septic system, most of the time, if it's a good listing agent on the other side, they're going to have the septic form uploaded into Matrix or whatever platform your MLS uses in associated documents where you can glance at that. And so I like to glance at that ahead of time, kind of see where the septic is located, because sometimes if it's a conventional system, it's not going to have those lids that you see in yards. And so it's covered up in dirt. So it's kind of nice to know where it is, because sometimes we can look and we can see where the septic system is and just quickly see if there's standing water in the drain field. That's probably not a good thing unless it's just recently rained. And so I like to know that at the showing, because it just gives you an opportunity to look versus, getting back after the showing. Now they're showing interest in the property and we didn't even look to see where the septic tank was and to just do an initial eye test, if you will. When buyers are buying a home with a septic system, some things they need to be on the lookout for is the age of the system. If it's a conventional system and it's older, you just want to look and make sure that the drain field's good, because a lot of times, roots and the ground moving can cause the drain field to collapse in areas, and then you'll have standing water. A lot of the times, conventional systems can go real long. With an aerobic system, there's a lot more features and tech and wiring and air compressed and all that. And a good septic inspector is going to run a very thorough stress test on it and kind of give you a state of where that system is at, because it's normal during a 5-year period of owning an aerobic system that you might have to replace a compressor or one of the various parts and spend a couple $100. On a conventional system, to my knowledge, it seems like the expenses are a lot fewer, but when there are expenses, they're a lot more costly. When you put a house under contract, you're going to obviously line up a general inspection. I usually like to hire a separate inspector to do that, who specializes in only septic systems. And that process, I'm not an inspector, so I don't know the detailed outline, but the process basically looks like them turning on some faucets, flushing toilets, and putting some stress on that system to see how it performs. And they're going to walk out, and they're going to look in the drain field. They're going to check if it's an aerobic system. They're going to check the lines that's getting rid of the water. And then they're going to look in the system and see the levels and make sure everything's progressing the way it should. And so that's the rough outline of how they're going to do the inspection. When you're doing the septic inspection, it's not required by any laws to have it pumped prior to the inspection, but that can vary depending on your market. So I'm in Waco, and I've rarely ever had to do that. But I know down in Austin, it is more the norm to have it pumped prior to the inspection. So when you put a house under contract and you're doing the septic inspection and you have to have it pumped, that's a negotiable item. So when you put a house under contract and you have to get it pumped before the inspection, then it is best to negotiate that in special provisions when you submit your offer. When you're dealing with a septic system property, there's a couple things you need to watch out for beyond just what we've already talked about, and that's local ordinances. So depending on where you are in the state, you may have requirements to have service contracts and submit proof of that to your local governing body. So if you're a new agent or you're an experienced agent that hasn't done a lot of septic system properties, then you need to ask a lot of questions. You need to get a bunch of documentation. You need to make sure your contract is correct. If you do those 3 things, then you should be in great shape. I'm Nick Schwedock, and thanks a lot for watching.